Trying to make sense of it all.
Milking it.
Turn your Bibles, if you will. Numbers chapter 13. When you find your place, go ahead and stand. Numbers chapter 13. Numbers chapter 13. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to start reading in verse 1. I'm going to probably read through verse 3, and then we're going to skip down to verse 16, I think is what we're going to do. So we're going to read Numbers 13, 1 through 3, then we'll skip down to verse 16. Starting in verse 1, Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Send thou men, that they may search the land of Canaan, which I give unto the children of Israel. Of every tribe of their fathers shall ye send a man, every one a ruler among them. And Moses, by the commandment of the Lord, sent them from the wilderness of Paran. All those men were heads of the children of Israel. Then skip down to verse 16. These are the names of the men which Moses sent to spy out the land. And Moses called Hoshea the son of Nun, Jehoshua, and Moses sent them to spy out the land of Canaan, and said unto them, Get you up this way southward, and go up into the mountain, and see the land what it is, and the people that dwell therein, whether they be strong or weak, few or many, and what the land is that they dwell in, whether it be good or bad, and what cities they be that they dwell in, whether in tents or in strongholds, and what the land is, whether it be fat or lean, whether there be wood therein or not, and be of good courage, and bring of the fruit of the land. Now the time was of the first ripe grapes. So they went up and searched the land from the wilderness of Zin unto Rahab, as men come to Hamath. And we'll go ahead and stop there, and let's have a word of prayer. Lord, I do want to thank you for the opportunity we have to be in your house tonight, Lord, and the opportunity, the privilege that we have to be able to open your word and to hear from you tonight, Lord. And I do pray that you will use this time, Lord. I pray that you will help us to hear from you, Lord. Help me and this, whatever this head cold is going on, not to get in the way of what you have for us tonight, Lord. I pray this in your name. Amen. You can go ahead and be seated. So this passage we know. Most who have spent much time in church have heard of the 12 who spied Canaan. Junior church, growing up, there's the song, 12 men went to spy out Canaan. If I didn't have a hoarse throat right now, I thought about attempting to sing it to start off the message, but I tried to sing the congregationals while Brother Edward was leading them, and about half the time my voice either stopped, squeaked, or did nothing. So we're not going to try that right now, or that would be terrible. I should have, if I'd have thought of it in advance, I should have had you lead 12 men went to spy out Canaan right before the message, but he's not looking confident in that option either. So we won't do that right now. But we know the song. It's familiar. I spent enough time talking about that I'm not going to sing it that most of you probably have it going in your head right now. They're on the border of the promised land, and before they go in, God tells Moses, send men into the land to search it out. And I've had people ask me, well, why did God do that? Why did he send them to spy it out? And I'll be honest, in the past, I haven't had an answer. I did some searching on it kind of on my own. You know what I found? Nowhere does God tell them to spy out the land. When Moses sends the men, Moses tells them to spy out the land. Moses tells them some specific things to look for. He says, see if the land's good to dwell in, if the land is good for farming, if the land is fat or lean, see if the people are few or many, strong or weak. Moses tells them, go see if they live in tents or in walled cities. But that's Moses, not God. Which makes sense because God already knew that the land was good to dwell in. God already knew that it was good for farming, and God already knew exactly how many people were there and how strong the people were and how the kind of cities they lived in. He didn't need to go send spies to find that out. He created it. He knew. He's all-knowing. He didn't need spies to tell him those things. That would be like me building a house, and then after it's done, someone, asking if they can, you're asking how many, I don't know, it would be like me building a house and then saying, Brother Jantz, I have no idea how many bedrooms or bathrooms are in it. Why am I looking at Brother Pickens and saying Brother Jantz? I saw the confused look on his face and thought, why are you confused? I'm the confused one. Brother Jance, you're over here. See, here's why. Because I plan on picking on Fred later, and I already told him I'm going to. So I'm purposely trying to avoid Fred for now so I can save him for later. It would be like me building a house and saying, Brother Pickens, I built this house, but I have no idea how many bedrooms and bathrooms are in it. Will you go search it for me? That wouldn't make sense. You wouldn't do that because I would know. God made the land. He had promised it to his people. He knew all those details about it. He knew that it was a good land, and he knew that it would be good for his people. That's why he promised it to them. You think about it, God even knew about the walled cities and I'm going to get ahead of myself a little bit here, but the giants that they come back reporting about, he knew about those. But he also knew how he was going to defeat all those cities and those giants. But you notice, God didn't say to go spy it out. Let's look at verse 1 through 3 again. I know we just read it, but look at verse 1 through 3 again. See if you catch this. Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Send now men, that they may search the land of Canaan, which I give unto the children of Israel. Of every tribe of their fathers shall ye send a man, every one a ruler among them. We'll go ahead and stop there. Verse 3 isn't applicable for right now. Go search the land is what he tells them. There's a big difference between I want you to search something and I want you to spy. There's a difference. When you're spying for something, you're trying to catch the details that no one else noticed. You're trying to find the fault, the weakness. Maybe it's just me, but I've never heard of a spy trying to find the good in people. No, they're looking for the bad. They're looking for that dark secret. That's what spying is, sneaking around corners to find some fault. And in a way, that's the mentality that it appears 10 of these men went into the land with. Trying to find why this wouldn't work. They wanted to find, all the things that are going to cause them problems. All the things that they maybe are going to stand in their way, or all the obstacles that's going to hinder them from being able to do what God wants them to do. The things that are going to hinder them from being able to live through this. Because some people are just that way, aren't they? That they automatically go into every situation looking for the negative, looking for the bad in it. Honestly, I think it's in all of our nature. Have you ever noticed it's easier to notice the bad about things than the good? We go to whatever it's going to be. We go to some event and we forget about all the good things that took place, but we remember the bad things. We remember the things we didn't like about it. It's human nature. A while back, it's been a while ago now, but I was working on a big commercial job, and part of what we were doing, we were hanging cast iron pipe overhead in a breezeway, and it was 20-foot ceilings in there, and it's 6-inch cast iron pipe. The cast iron pipe, we had, for reference sake, a 10-foot stick of it was just under 500 pounds. So we're talking really heavy stuff. So how we have to do that is we have to put these anchors in this cement ceiling, and then we hang the pipe off of these anchors. So, by the time you have the anchor and the hanger and all that, it's probably 18 foot off the ceiling. We're putting all these anchors in, or 18 feet off the floor. That's a hallway. So you're going to have people there constantly. And we're putting these in. The guy that I'm working with, the guy I'm working with says, Caleb, I've been thinking, if I did one of these anchors wrong and it breaks and this 6-inch cast iron pipe falls onto someone, do you think it'd kill him? My answer was, probably, immediately followed by, why, do you think you did one of them wrong? Should we be concerned about this? Is this, that? And his response was, well, no, but I always think through everything that could go wrong. And a lot of people go through life that way, that they're looking for everything that could go wrong, focusing on all the problems. That's what spying is. Looking for what might go wrong, searching for the problems or those things that might be an issue along the way. I read one commentary said, searching the land, how God said it, searching the land would be like surveying it, checking it out, seeing where you want your family to live. Again, remember, this is heads of household that God said to send into the land. One of the commentaries wrote that perhaps, or at least his thought was, perhaps they were going to decide how they're going to divide the land. And I don't know, the Bible doesn't tell us that here, but there is a distinct difference between search the land, which is what God said, and spy, which is what Moses said. Now, kind of turning the focus a little bit this evening, that kind of as, I guess, the background for this, I want to put our focus on, out of these 12, on the 2. Now, I have kind of 3 main areas that I want us to see regarding those 2 this evening. The first thing I want us to see is simply, and we're going to do this, we're going to look at these 3 things, and then we're going to look at an application this evening, kind of as our first service headed into this new year. First thing I want to see is their mission. What was their job to be? I've already somewhat mentioned it. I'm going to kind of break their mission into 2 parts. Their mission was given by God. Their mission given by God was pretty simple. You're going to go into the land and you're going to search it. Not too complicated. And I'm sure I'm oversimplifying it. I know. There's logistics to it. They're going to go into a land that we know they're not going to be welcomed with open arms. By this point, the people knew that the Jews were coming. They had heard that the Jews claimed that the land they currently lived in, the Jews were going to be trying to take possession of. So, that's automatically going to cause you to be a little bit hesitant of this group coming in. And then by this point, I'm sure that news of what's happened in Egypt had reached these people and what's happened along the way. We know that when they got to Rahab's house, she already heard of them. So they probably already know about this group that's at the edge of the promised land over there, and they already know what their God has done. So when a group of people like that are headed toward your home, saying your home is about to be my home, you're not exactly going to, put out the welcome mat for that person. So I get that it's not, a simple, this is not a leisure trip. I understand this is not just a simple thing, and there was going to be some logistics and all of that. There's going to be some of that. But what we see is a pretty simple mission. I want you to go into land and check it out. That's God's plan. But then you have Moses' plan. Moses' plan had a few more specifics. He had some things, if you're going to be sending some men into the country anyways, I'd like a few answers on some things. God, if you're going to already send some men in to search the land, there's some things I'd like spied out just to clarify in my mind. Which we do sometimes, right? God, you've given me this much information. I'd really like to know a few more of these details, so I'm going to see if I can find my way to get them. So he tells them, go, just like God said. But along with that, he says, like I mentioned a moment ago, find out if the land is a good land to dwell in, if it's good for farming, if there's a lot of people to fight, if they're strong or weak people, and if they're in walled cities. Moses wanted details. He didn't want to go into this blind. He wanted some insight. This was going to be a big deal. Excuse me. And he wasn't totally trusting God in this one yet. God hadn't given Moses a lot of those details. He had told Moses where to go. He had told him that I'll give you this promised land, and he had made it clear that he was going to fight for them and he was going to do it. But he hadn't said how. Moses is, I try often when I'm reading this, we get really quick to judge when they make mistakes, when people in the Bible make mistakes. Try to think of it from Moses' side here. I mean, Moses probably thought, well, I have to lead this ragtag group of people who are just a bunch of fleeing servants to fight and win the promised land. So let's at least see what we're up against. Let's see if it's a good land to decide if it's going to be worth all the work this is going to be, and then let's see what kind of armies we're going to have to fight. You can break what Moses wants to know into kind of 3 main concerns, and really those are concerns that most of us deal with. He has the concern of, is it going to be comfortable? It's what he's asking about dwelling in the land. Is there going to be a comfortable place to live? He asks, will my needs be met? Asking about the farming and those sorts of things. Are we going to have food? Are we going to have the basic needs that we have? And is it going to be hard? Is the fight against these people going to be really difficult? Do they have strong armies? Are there cities fortresses or tents? How difficult is this going to be? Those are concerns that most people have when God leads them to do something. I mean, is this going to be out of my comfort zone? Will I have all my needs met, or is God going to lead me here and then let me starve, let me struggle through this? Is this going to be a difficult thing? Excuse me. Their mission in a nutshell, was to go and see, their mission from Moses was to go and see how much work they were in for, if it's really worth it. Here's what Moses is checking out. Is obeying God's will worth the work that we're about to go through? Like, I know this is where God's leading, but is it worth the struggle? We've seen their mission from God and their mission from Moses. Second thing I want us to see is the report that was brought back, what they saw, what they came back saying. Numbers 13, look down at verse 25 and 26 with me. And they returned from searching the land after 40 days, and they went and came to Moses and to Aaron and to all the congregation of the children of Israel under the wilderness of Paran to Kadesh, and brought back word unto them and unto the congregation, and showed them the fruit of the land. They're back from their mission. They are ready to debrief Moses and the people, but they have a problem. 12 men went. They went the same place. They saw exactly the same thing, but they came back saying completely different things, which isn't all that uncommon, because everyone has their own bias and their own perspective. So here's where I said I was going to pick on Brother Fred. So I'm going to try something I am always very hesitant to do. I asked Mrs. Sundquist if I could use Ella tonight for an example. I thought it was great. Her exact response, "It's your funeral," then no telling what she's going to say. So I think that's perfect. So I decided I was going to counter that with Brother Fred, which is the perfect voice of reason. So if I can get Ella and Brother Fred up here for a quick example. It's super simple, super short. Come up here. Okay, come stand right here. All right, look out there. Tell me one thing. What's the first thing you see? You're doing a lot of looking for the first thing you see. What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you look out there? Nothing. What? Backyard? Perfect. Perfect. All right, you can go be seated. That was it. All right, Fred. No, you don't get to leave yet. Stay in the same spot. Okay, you look out there. What is the first thing that you see when you look out there?
The front yard?
The front yard. All right, that'll work. Go sit down. Thank you. Actually, that works fantastic. Neither of them gave what I would have thought of at all. I was expecting, the tree, the people, the Bible, the chairs, the carpet, anything. I mean, the dirt on the floor. I don't know. I was expecting something in the room. But it's perfect, actually, so that means Ella stood right here, and her perspective saw the backyard. Brother Fred stood right here, and his perspective saw the front yard. I stood right here and actually saw things in the room. Three people, the exact same spot, but saw entirely different things. Because our perspective is different. What's on our mind, what we notice, the things that are important to us are going to be different. Our perspective is different. These 12 went into the promised land, 12 people who all walked together, all went the same place, all saw the same things. But what they came out noticing was entirely different because of perspective. These 12 came back, but they didn't have the same report. Now, I understand I've never been in the military, but I can imagine that if a group of men went on a mission like this, and then afterwards were debriefing and could not agree on what happened, it would probably cause all sorts of confusion, and someone would probably get in a whole lot of trouble. I mean, these men had all gone together. They had all seen the same things. They had carried back some of the fruit of the land. So, you do have that as some evidence of, it's right in front of you. And I don't know how big it was. They said they carried one cluster of grapes on a branch between two men. That tells me that it's either a huge cluster of grapes, and my imagination goes crazy, either it's a cluster of grapes with like thousands of grapes, or they're grapes the size of, watermelons or something. Either way, it's big. I mean, they've all seen this. They've all seen this, and the figs and the pomegranates and everything else that they talk about in the report, they've all seen it. They've all seen the good things about the land. They've all seen the cities. They've all seen the people. They've all seen the same things, but saying different things. And we have the two main reports. The 10 come in, and they give the kind of, if you will, the majority report. If you look at chapter 13, verse 27 through 29, they told him and said, "We came unto the land whither thou sentest us, and surely it floweth with milk and honey, and this is the fruit of it. Nevertheless," so they tell him, yep, there are good things. Nevertheless, the people will be strong that dwell in the land. And the cities are walled and very great. Moreover, we saw the children of Anak there. And the Amalekites dwell in the land of the south, and the Hittites and the Jebusites, the Amorites dwell in the mountains, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and by the coast of Jordan. Skip down, we'll go ahead and read this too. Skip down to verse 31. "But the men that went up with him said, We be not able to go against the people, for they are stronger than we. And they brought up an evil report of the land which they had searched unto the children of Israel, saying, The land through which we have gone to search it is a land that eateth up the inhabitants thereof, and all the people that we saw are men of great stature. And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight." Come back saying, yeah, the land is great. Land flowing with milk and honey, just like God said. And it's great for growing things. Look at the fruit we brought back. It's great. But people are strong. They live in walled cities. There's giants there. We can't stand up against them. I love how, they, I think it was verse 29, they list off, the Amalekites dwell in the land of the south, the Hittites, the Jebusites, they're listing it all off as if they thought they're going to go in there and it's just going to be empty and they can just, walk into an empty place. Listing it all off, there's giants there, there's people there, we can't stand up against them. We feel like grasshoppers next to them and they're going to squish us like a bug. Verse 32, it says they brought an evil report. They come back, saying, yeah, it's a great land, God was right, it's amazing. We can't do it. Not possible. And then you have the opposite side of the spectrum. You have Joshua and Caleb. And I'm not going to have us read the verses on this, or I'm going to get ahead of our last point a little bit, but you have these two who, as the first 10 are giving their report, you have these two who come back saying, yes, it's a good land, and it flows with milk and honey, and the land is good for growing, and yeah, we saw the giants there too, and we saw the walled cities, and we saw the, all the armies there, the people there, but they're weak compared to our God. We're going to get there in a minute. I'll have us read that in just a minute, or have us read it in just a minute, but that was their argument. Their argument was not, no, these guys are lying to you, there's no problems there. Their argument was, yeah, there's going to be battles there, but God. Not surprisingly, the people didn't listen to the majority. You look at chapter 14, verse 1. All the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept that night. Children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron. The whole congregation said unto them, Would God that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would God we had died in the wilderness? And wherefore hath the Lord brought us unto this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be a prey? Were it not better for us to return into Egypt? They said one to another, Let us make a captain, let us return into Egypt. They went into this, woe is me, why did we come here to just die in battle? We should have just been content to be servants the rest of our life in Egypt. In fact, let's do one more. Who wants to lead us back to be servants? I mean, the report of the two had hardly even been heard. Which brings us to our third point this evening. Again, I said third point and then kind of an application to this. I want us to see their stand. And I have two different places that I want to see. First is chapter 13, verse 30. Now, I don't know if you've paid attention to the verse we read. Chapter 13, verse 30 is right in the middle of when the 10 are giving their report. It's right in the middle of it. And Caleb stilled the people before Moses and said, Let us go up at once and possess it. for we are well able to overcome it. Right in the middle of the report from the 10, Caleb says, hold on. Let's go take it now. There's no reason we can't do this. And skip down chapter 14, verse 6 to 9. Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, which were of them that searched the land, rent their clothes, and they spake unto all the company of the children of Israel, saying, the land which we passed through to search it is an exceeding good land. Notice this, if the Lord delight in us, then he will bring us into the land and give it us a land which floweth with milk and honey. Only rebel not against the Lord, neither fear ye the people of the land, for they are bread for us, or their defense is departed from them, and the Lord is with us, fear them not. Their people, after hearing the report of Joshua and Caleb, have gone into their pity party, and let's just go back to Egypt. Why didn't we just stay in bondage and just get, live our lives out there instead of just getting killed in battle? Sure, we were in bondage, and sure, our taskmasters were hard, but we've forgotten all that and just remember the food and safety. Joshua and Caleb stop them and make this stand. The Lord will bring us into the land. The Lord will give us the land. Fear them not. Their stand was simple. Trust God. Their stand was not, we can do this, or if we band together, or the strength of our nation. No, their stand was, trust God. He's led us this far. He's promised us the land. He brought us out of Egypt. He delivered us from Pharaoh's army. He's brought us to this point. Just follow him and he'll take care of our enemies. Now, think about this. That would not have been an easy stand to make, because the people have already decided this was a bad idea, we should leave. I mean, at this point, making their stand of we need to just trust God and move forward. I mean, this is standing up in front of this would have been, standing up in front of an angry mob and saying the opposite of what they want to hear. That's not a good plan. I mean, just watch the news. Anytime there's some sort of big riot and the police go and try to break it up, it's not pretty. It usually gets pretty ugly. It's what Joshua and Caleb are facing. They're facing an angry mob, if you will, who's all saying this was a bad idea, we should just leave. And then when they heard what Joshua and Caleb said, they wanted to stone them. I mean, this is a hard stand to take, but a stand that they didn't back down from. They say it, the crowd wants to kill them, but you don't see them back down from what they said. So why do I say all this tonight? And why do I kind of go through this? I know this is fairly familiar to us, trying to point a few things out. Here's the application. We're not, or at least let me change that slightly. We should not be different from these two men. Our mission as a child of God, and I said earlier, we're talking, this is the first service headed into a new year. Our mission as a child of God is really pretty simple. God told them, go and search. God tells us, go and teach. The Great Commission tells us to go, therefore, and teach all nations. Go search the land. Give me a little liberty here. Go search the land to find the lost and tell them about Christ. These two men brought back a report that was not popular with the majority. When you're telling the message that Jesus gives us, it's not too popular. People often don't want to hear that they're a sinner. They prefer to think that they're okay on their own. People don't want to hear that they can't get to heaven on their own. They don't want to hear that it's not by their good works or not by the things that they do. They don't want to hear that they have to rely on Jesus and trust him. We live in a world that no one wants to be responsible to someone else. They don't want to have to answer to God. It's not a popular message. But it's a message we're supposed to give. And these two men took a stand. We need, I'll stress that, we need to take a stand. We need to take a stand against wrong, against sin. Again, I know it's not popular right now. I know people will get upset. Sure. but we can't be afraid to stand for right. We need to take a stand for souls. A soul is worth it. We can read of Christians in the past who were willing to die for the cause of reaching the lost. Stories of men and women being burned at the stake, preaching the gospel until they die, because a soul is worth it. Take a stand for souls. Take a stand for God. Take the stand that right is right, whether people like it or not, and not willing to back down. I don't believe that a Christian needs to be obnoxious. I'm not saying that, take a stand, be obnoxious to people about it. You think about it, Daniel wasn't obnoxious about his stance on praying, but he was unwilling to bend. It's not like they made this decree and he went and got in their face and prayed. He just didn't stop praying. I'm not saying, we need to be obnoxious and we need to be pig-headed about everything we don't like. But when it comes to what we read in this book, we should be unwilling to bend. Unwilling to change. So here's kind of the challenge this evening, the application this evening, and I'll be done. Headed into this new year, we use the new year because why not? But really, it ought to be the case regardless. It ought to be that we decide, I'm going to be like these two spies, trusting God, that I may not know the way, and I may not understand all the details, and yeah, there are some walled cities and giants in front of me, but I trust that my God's going to take care of it, and I'm just going to trust Him and be ready to stand for right. Let's pray. Lord, I pray that you will, Lord, help us to really kind of grasp this challenge this evening, I guess, as I tried to end it that way, Lord, of taking the stance of these two men. Just deciding that as a child of God, I want to live a life where I trust Him going forward. Whatever that is, whatever the walled cities or giants that may be in front of me, they don't matter. I'm going to trust God. Help us to take the stance that I'm going to stand for right, regardless if those around me agree with it or not. Regardless if it upsets people or not. I'm just going to stand for what's in this book and not back down. Pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen. All right, with your heads bowed and your eyes closed, we'll